Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Verge Podcast. I am your host, Virgil Edwards. As always, the goal of this show is to keep you from the brink of ignorance and on the verge of intelligence when it comes to politics in America today that does affect us all. I'm on social media every day. I know it's probably unhealthy, but you know what? It is the latest craze and how to best keep up with everything going on. One thing that I saw today on Twitter and on Facebook is the mainstream media whining and complaining about how President Donald Trump is having these press conferences, but not really calling on them for questions. And they're just absolutely flabbergasted by this. I mean, they can't figure out why for the last 16 years, the first half of that they spent being able to criticize, slander, and call President George Bush everything but a milk cow, but they still get called on. Then they spent the last 8 years being able to basically they journalistic fellatio to President Barack Obama. And they can't figure out why that all of a sudden President Trump thinks it's appropriate to no longer call upon them to ask questions. Let me provide a little insight as to why this is happening. You see, on November 8th, 2016, this nation elected Donald J. Trump to be the 45th President of the United States, not Hillary Clinton. Immediately after the election, the mainstream media went on this whining spree that still has yet to end, by the way, about how, it's all this fake news that's going on, that caused so many to be so negative about Hillary. And so they continue to blame everybody but themselves. Hillary continues to blame everybody but herself. Liberals and Democrats blame everybody but themselves. That's the prerequisite to be a liberal, is you have to be willing to blame everyone but yourself. You also have to be willing to commit to the lie. And we've seen this throughout Donald Trump's short presidency that hasn't even lasted a month yet. But yet, the media is already losing their minds. There is no greater example of fake news other than what you can turn on your cable or satellite TV to when you view the likes of CNN and MSNBC, or when you open your papers like the New York Times. That's your fake news, America. That's your liberal propaganda that you're being fed. I mean, the countless number of times that these outlets have had to issue retractions because they flat out got a story wrong, or named the wrong person, or got their materials completely unvetted and unverified, but yet they broadcasted it anyway. I mean, doesn't it, eventually make you scratch your head and wonder why the media is now facing a president that no longer wishes to call upon them for questions? I've seen people on social media today telling the media, "Oh, just boycott the press conferences. That'll show them." I'm like, really? I'm sorry, but if every quote real unquote journalist boycotted the press conferences would be more deserted than Michael Moore's personal gym equipment. Oh, he made a fat joke. I'm sorry, but I'm not putting up with it. The media is getting precisely what they deserve. They've lied to the American people long enough. They're not going to get any sympathy from people like me who has witnessed their, like I said, it's their journalistic fellatio of the liberal agenda and liberal politicians. Softballing them, just basically pleasuring them in the media. I mean, it can't get any more plain than that. Here's my suggestions. If you want to get back on any sort of level of credibility with not only President Trump, but with the American people, here's my list of things you've got to do. 1, you've got to stop trying to push war with Russia. That means you've got to stop putting in front of the truth people that are more than willing to push America into the next war. It means being willing to be humble enough to understand that you don't actually have a right to have the president call on you to answer questions. You don't. You have a right to have the opportunity, but you don't actually have the right to demand that the president call on you. You've just got to be more humble in general. I mean, your job is to find out the truth, not to see who can first dig up dirt and be the first to try to damage the credibility of our president. You want to know something else you can do to get back on the good side of the president and the good side of the American people? You can actually try to ask real questions concerning the issues that affect real American people. The media spends so much of its time, trying to protect politicians, particularly liberal politicians, that they forget that it's not the liberal politicians that pay their paychecks, that continue to subscribe to their form of media, whether that be in TV or a newspaper or whatever. It's the American people. Why not try asking a question like, why don't American people deserve to control their own healthcare choices? Try asking a question like, why don't people deserve the full right to own their property once that property is paid off? Why do people have to succumb to paying property taxes? Those are questions that will not only earn you credibility, but will put you back into some sort of good graces with the people that actually subscribe to your brand of media. You know, try acting like you actually went to school to be a journalist. So many of these people possess journalism degrees, but yet they abandon and flat out step on the very principles in which journalism is found. Meaning, the truth is blind. The truth is not liberal. The truth is not conservative. The truth is fact. The truth is researched. The truth is undeniable. But so many of these so-called journalists, they're so eager to be the first one to say something that they completely sell out their credibility. And instead of issuing sincere apologies when they get something wrong, all it gets is a little, retraction after time has passed and no one's really paying attention to it anymore. I mean, we've got so many of these so-called media watchdogs that are nothing more than reinforced propaganda mouthpieces. I mean, one of the, big phrases that came out of the prior election before last year was this whole fact checker thing. And I'm sorry, but very few of these so-called fact-checking groups do any real fact-checking. All they do is they go into an issue with a preconceived agenda, a preconceived notion that if the issue is about a Republican, that the Republican is wrong. And the very first thing they find that even comes close to contradicting the Republican, they post it and say, here's proof, here's, how he's wrong. But that's it. They don't go any further because they've achieved their agenda. The American people's sick of it. And they elected a president who, quite frankly, does not care about what the media was allowed to do for the last 16 years. This president doesn't care. And I thank God for that. Because we don't need a president that's going to just sit there and allow fake media, fake news, alternative facts-filled mainstream media to tell us what's going on. That's why I love it that Donald Trump is choosing to tweet instead of allowing the mainstream media to play the middleman. I'm almost out of time here. But what I want to ensure that I get in here is that we have a president now that is not placating to the media. And it's the media's fault. All their fault. And they're crybabying over it. Make sure you share this podcast with your friends and family on social media. Facebook, Twitter, or whatever your choice. Get this out there. We can take this nation back. Until then.